My dad recently told me a story about how he had went to a car dealership and bought a Cadillac, and it was an interesting story. He told me. He told me how he literally got upset at a couple of the car salesmen because they were trying to get him to finance his car, even though he told them he was paying cash for it. They felt it necessary to give him a breakdown on how expensive the car was and how much it would be after taxes and fees and all of that, as though he didn't understand that. And when he explained to him that it was no problem, their retort was, "You might need the money." For some reason, because they could not afford to do it, they could not wrap their brain around the fact that he could very easily write a check for $55,000 for a car, and only a fool would pay $55,000 cash for a car if they only have $58,000. That's what a fool would do. That's what an ignoramus would do. Without knowing anything about his income, his finances, his financial solvency, or anything else, they made assumptions, trying to tell him why it was wiser to finance this car and hold on to that money in case he needs it. Common sense would tell you that if you can pay $55,000 cash for a car, there's a hell of a lot more money where that one came from. And you don't have to concern yourself with that. You're talking about the mindset of a stupid person who would spend their last money on something they don't need, a material object, to try to make an expression or a point. Poor people and broke people are the ones most likely to waste money trying to look prosperous, even when they're not prosperous. And that's one of the things we're going to be talking about on this video. The things that people do to keep them impoverished, to prevent them from ever becoming truly successful. I want you to notice on this particular image, between the letters R and P on the word poor people, right between the word poor and people, this guy has a ring. It's a ring that takes up all 5 of his fingers with the word daddy on it, D-A-D-D-Y, gold and diamonds. That's the type of thing only poor people and people with a poverty mindset do or ever would do. Trying too hard. It's what we call flossing. Poor people are the ones that are most likely to spend money frivolously. Spending money you don't have to impress people you don't like and don't know. It makes no sense. Because if they knew you, they probably wouldn't like you anyway. So why go through all of that trouble? Because you want somebody to look at you and say, ooh and ah. And oftentimes, the very people that are doing that can barely afford whatever they're using to represent themselves or to misrepresent themselves as being successful. That's a poverty mindset. And it keeps people in a poverty class. There are some things that poor people do that nobody else does. They do those things in order to look prosperous, and they are actually a dead giveaway that they are not prosperous at all. Pawn shops are a good example. There's a few shows on television now, reality shows, dealing with pawn shops. And you notice that a lot of people are going into these pawn shops with extravagant jewelry and items and things like that. And you wonder why they ever bought them in the first place, why they got them in the first place. I'm going to tell you something about pawn shops. The only time successful people or people that have money actually go to a pawn shop would be if they just have to get rid of stuff and they want to get rid of it quickest, fastest, easiest way they can. And that means going to a pawn shop. People with money are less likely to put an ad in Craigslist or anywhere else and have a bunch of people coming to their house, evaluating items, looking at it, and then they have to deal with all these people trying to haggle and get the best price. They're more likely, especially if it's something they inherited or they just want to clean out their garage or their kid's room, they might just say, okay, we'll take all this stuff to the pawn shop. Whatever we get is what we get. They just want to get rid of it. That's what people with money do. That's what successful people do. What poor people do is they go to a pawn shop with items they couldn't afford in the first place when they bought it, and they will pawn it with every intent of getting it back. That is a dead giveaway that you are broke. There's nothing more we need to know about you. You're broke. Otherwise, you would not be pawning your items at a pawn shop to pay that high interest when you have the intent of picking those items back up later. You're broke. And it's okay. I'm not belittling you for being broke, but I am going to belittle you for the fact that if you are taking Rolex watches, $3,000 watches and things like that to a pawn shop, you've got to pawn it to try to get $500 because you don't have $500. That doesn't make any sense. You couldn't afford to watch in the first place. But it's so important to you to give the appearance of having something you don't have or being somebody that you are not, that rather than just selling, getting rid of it, and moving on, you're going to pawn it, pay the money back, plus interest, because you want to keep up that appearance. All I need to know is that you pawned something and I know that you're broke. Period. There's nothing more you can say. Only poor people and people with a poverty mindset need to announce to the world that they are not poor. I have a number of multimillionaire friends who could care less what you think. One of them, a Jamaican friend of mine, for years, him and I both would joke about his car because it was a raggedy piece of crap. We both would ride around in it. And one day it got hit, it got totaled. He went to a dealership, he wrote a check, paid cash, bought a brand new truck for about $28,000 back then. That was a long time ago. And it was no big deal. But until then, he was content to drive around in his car that was paid for, that was 10 years old. The guy's a multimillionaire. And there's a book called The Millionaire Next Door, which I'm going to be talking about. And what you're going to find out in that book, and what I'm going to show you, is that out of all the millionaires that they interviewed, you'd be surprised how few of them have ever spent more than, like, let's say, $300 on items like a watch. More than $100, $120 on a pair of shoes. I can show you a video clip of people that are obviously impoverished, boasting and bragging about paying $500 for a freaking tennis shoe. And then you have millionaires saying, I've never paid more than $125 for any shoe, even a dress shoe.
Let me see him. Yeah, that's how we rock right here, man. 500 a shoe. What? God damn. 500 a shoe.
500 a shoe. Are you kidding me? Okay, we just showed you people living in a ghetto bragging about paying $500 for a tennis shoe. Now let's read an excerpt from the book The Millionaire Next Door. And what I'm trying to do in this video is expose this poverty mindset for what it is, and hopefully it'll benefit at least one person. That's my objective. Then certainly footwear. And in this book, they're basically interviewing all of these multimillionaires and to try to get a consensus as to a mindset. And it's a little bit very revealing. And to some people, it's a bit shocking because it's not what people think. And I can certainly relate to everything that this book is talking about. I think the same way. Let us return to our proposed TV program. Mr. Lucas is still on stage. What type of shoes does Johnny Lucas wear? The TV audience, if any, are still tuned in, will again be surprised by his answer. Johnny, like most millionaires, does not buy high-priced footwear. About half the millionaires surveyed reported that they had never spent $140 or more for a pair of shoes. 1 in 4 had never spent more than $100. These are millionaires, by the way. 1 in 4 had never spent more than $100. Only about 1 in 10 had spent over $300. If not millionaires, then who is keeping the high-priced shoe manufacturers and dealers in business? Certainly some millionaires purchase expensive shoes. But for every millionaire in the highest price paid category of over $300, there are at least 8 non-millionaires. Okay? And I mentioned my Jamaican friend who drove the raggedy car until it got totaled. Multi-millionaire, owns properties both in the United States and Jamaica, multiple properties, and is one of the most frugal people that I know. Very, very frugal. Does not believe in spending a lot of money on anything unnecessarily. Clothes, shoes, anything else. And that's most of the people I know, that's how they are. You know, because we don't come from that poverty mindset or that poverty class where you just feel that you need to go out of your way to make a statement at all times to total strangers. Look at me, look at me, look what I've got. That's the poverty mindset. And that's what we're talking about today. I'm not saying that's an order. I'm just saying that this mindset of frugality and living below your means is one that is common to successful people, and one that people that have this poverty class mindset cannot even relate to, fathom, or begin to understand. They are the ones most likely to brag about spending a lot of money for something and to criticize people for spending a little money on something. What if I told you? We're all familiar with these 99-cent only stores. That means everything in the store is 99 cents. You go in the store, every single item, they don't need a price tag on it. You know, if it's in that store, it's 99 cents. They have items in that store for 99 cents that you can go to another store and find on sale for $12 and $13. But in that store, you can get it for 99 cents. Now, who do you think would criticize people for going to a 99-cent store? People with money or people without money? People without money. Poor people are the ones that would criticize people for going to a 99-cent store. People with money would basically applaud it and say that it's smart and it's intelligent. Let me tell you something else. Out of all the 99-cent store chains in America, the most successful one of them all, the one that gets the most business out of all the 99-cent stores in the entire United States, what do you think that is? In some ghetto someplace? No, it's in a place that you all know. Let me give you the zip code, because I know you all know this zip code. 90210 is the zip code. And if you forgot that show they had on TV years ago, 90210, that was the name of the show, that is the zip code for Beverly Hills, which has the most prosperous 99-cent only store in America. It is in Beverly Hills. Now, what does that tell you? Let me tell you something. People are not nearly as impressed as you might think they are with the flossing and the blinging, because oftentimes it sends the exact opposite message that you might think it sends. It does. Even if you actually have money, I don't care if your jewelry's real, I don't care how expensive it is, when you go out of your way to make a statement, you're actually telling the whole world where you come from. Poverty. Smart people do not buy expensive toys they cannot afford. Do not do it, will not do it. Period. A friend of mine was telling me that her and a friend of hers, who owns a business, they had an objective to buy a Mercedes this year, 2014. She told me that last year. And I pointed out how stupid that was on both of their cases. And she said, why? And I was pointing out how expensive it was to maintain a Mercedes. And she basically made the point that, then why did I have a Mercedes if it was so stupid? I said, because I can afford it. It's not stupid to have one. It's stupid when you can't afford something and you spend money you don't have trying to make a statement. You're renting an apartment. You don't even own a house or a condo or anything. You're talking about buying a Mercedes. And same with your friend. Not only that, but I told her, I said, your friend was borrowing money from you. I don't forget what people tell me. The fact that she had to borrow money from you ever tells me she's broke. Period. And so you're going to go from the same year, 2013, she's got to borrow money from you and didn't even pay it back when she was supposed to. She eventually paid it back, but not when she was supposed to. And now you're talking about buying an expensive car in order to make a statement. You have no idea how expensive it is to maintain one. Even if somebody gave you a car like that, you probably should not take it because you can't afford to keep it. There are expenses that go with these things that dumb people and broke people don't think about. You know? I mean, if you were to tell the average person on the street that somebody's going to give you $1 million home, they would rejoice. They'd say, wow, that's fine. If somebody gives you $1 million home, what are you going to do with it? Because if you live in it, if you keep it, how much do you think you got to pay in property taxes on $1 million home, even if you own it free and clear? Even if you own it free and clear, how much do you think the taxes are? And in California, I mean, homes can go from $1 million to $1.2 million, $2-3 million, just in decent neighborhoods. How much do you think the property taxes are? We're just talking about a $1 million home. Typically, they're about 1% per year. So what's 1% of $1 million? 10% is 100,000. So 1% is what? 10,000. You got to pay $10,000. You got to pay almost $1,000 a month just on the taxes on the home. And if you're poor, you can't even pay $600 a month in rent. And we're not even talking about the electricity and the gas and all of that it's going to take. In other words, you have to use your brain. You have to think. If buying something or having something is not easy, then you cannot afford it. Not only can oftentimes people not afford to buy something, you can't even afford to have it if you can't keep it or maintain it. And maintain the expenses that come with it. And the example of a home that I gave you, you got to talk about property taxes and maintenance and everything else. An example of a car, some cars are simply much more expensive to maintain. The insurance is much more expensive because of the type of car it is. Period. So even if somebody gave you this car, could you afford to keep it? Could you afford to drive it? The answer in most cases, the majority is no, you can't. Even if somebody gave it to you for free. Living well below your means is what smart people do. Here's an example of a house that I found randomly on the internet. And it's a very modest house. And it's, wow. It's extremely small. But, you know, it looks like the landscape, it looks decent. It's got a front yard, backyard, and it's well maintained. It looks, obviously, it's an older home. I would say it looks like it was built probably in the 60s or the 70s, possibly. You know, certainly not a newer home. But the point is, it is better to have a modest home like this that you can afford easily than have a home like this that you can barely afford. Paying your mortgage should not be a struggle. Nothing should be a struggle. It ought to be easy to do. If it's not easy, you can't afford it. That's my attitude about everything. If it's not easy, you can't afford it. You shouldn't lose any sleep over it. I mean, even if you rather you have a business or a job or whatever it is, there should be a downturn in the economy, and all of a sudden people are losing their homes because they lost their job. You couldn't afford the home you had in the first place. You couldn't, because see, if you have been working for any period of time, you should have accumulated enough wealth to where you could have lost your job and still been able to stay afloat for years and years and years to come. You should have created multiple streams of income to where one stream of income would not make you or break you, even your job. And if that's not the case, you cannot afford the house you bought. And you can't listen to the mortgagers who tell you that you can't afford it, because all they want to do is make money. The bankers do, the real estate agents do, the brokers do. Everybody wants to make money. Mortgage broker, everyone else. You can't go by what they tell you can afford. You have to consider all possibilities. And if you're not making enough money to save a substantial amount of money, then you cannot afford your lifestyle. You need to tone it down. What are the keys to saving? The keys to saving are consistency, discipline, and time.